Hi everyone, and welcome to Shelf Control. This will be another short video about a topic that I have some questions about and would like to engage in a discussion with you all. As you can tell from the title of the video, it's about separating the art from the artist. Can it be done? Should it be done? How is it done? And what we can come up with to try to motivate our decision making when it comes to controversial issues like this. What brought this to my attention was a game called Castle Assault has all of a sudden jumped up to the hotness on Board Game Geek. And it's a game I'd never heard of before, and every time that happens, I always check out the forum because someone always asks, why is this in the hotness? And clicking on it, it only had a review average score of 4.1 was its Board Game Geek score. So it's like, what's going on? And I go into the forums and I click on it, and if you guys don't know the news, at Gen Con, pallets of unopened Magic the Gathering product was stolen, and they had some pictures of the people who were walking out with the product. And apparently, allegedly, it's the designers of the game Castle Assault. One of them's wearing a Castle Assault t-shirt in the picture.
Allegedly.
And that has gotten the public up in arms, and they are review bombing the game, giving it a bunch of 1 scores because they stole Magic cards.
Allegedly.
I don't know, since the game was never on my radar, I don't know what the score was before that. It's only got, as of the time of this filming, only 200 ratings on it, but almost half of them are ones. And if you scroll through the first few most recent ratings, they're either ones or tens. People saying this game sucks and is made by crooks, and other ones giving it a 10 to be like, why are we giving this game a 1 just based on the actions of the designer? And so that's the question. I don't have a copy of that game. I know that there are games out there that have some controversy around them. I think Pax Pamir, the first printing, had an essay written by one of the publisher guys that was very pro-colonialism, and the designer himself was not very happy with having that in there, but it was his publisher doing it, and so that's included in there. And that rubbed people the wrong way when they buy their game, open it up, and there's this pro-colonialism essay in the rule book. Anyways, I don't have that game either. It seems like it's an interesting game. I don't know if it's one for my group, but they do have a second printing of it that does not have that essay in it. But what I do have is some print media, and these are books by some criticized authors. We got J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter, and we got Orson Scott Card with Ender's Game. And so these are books that I have that do fit into this conversation. Not so much the J.K. Rowling. These are my wife's books. Her and my boys are big fans, reading them. And Orson Scott Card, The Ender's Game, that is mine. I really liked that book, and the ones that followed it as well. So the thing is, the big question is, do the actions of the artist detract from the quality of the art? And that's a really difficult question. Some people have the stance that once, using an author in this case, once an author writes a book, the author is dead. And the reader reinterprets the work every time they read it with their mindset and their experiences. And so, like using Ender's Game as an example, Orson Scott Card is quite the homophobe, giving money to combat gay marriage and things like that. Excuse me. But when I read Ender's Game and its follow-up, Speaker of the Dead, and the character in the book doesn't. The character in the book seems like the kind of person who would tell Orson Scott Card to get over his bigotry and move on, actually. And so it's weird how somebody can write a book that doesn't push forward his worldview. Some of his other stuff might. I don't know. I've got such a big reading list that I've moved on from the Ender series onto other stuff. But the Ender series, at least the first, I think I've read the first 3 in the Ender series and Ender's Shadow, and I never got the impression of being anti-gay, trans, or anything like that. Instead, it seems almost like the characters are above that they're beyond that pettiness. But that also can cause a problem where if you read a book separate from its historical context of who wrote it and when, then you're ignoring a piece of what makes that book special. To give an example, maybe like Mark Twain, like a Huckleberry Finn. That's a book that people have been trying to ban out of libraries, and it has questionable terms for different races of people and the way that they're treated and in the book by the various characters. And so they've tried to come up with a sanitized version for kids to read. But if you separate the history from the book as it's originally written, it doesn't come out and say, hey, these terms are derogatory and they shouldn't be used to describe these people or address these people. Without that history, you could read the book and just assume that that's just another benign word that you can use. And without that historical context, some of the message could be lost. And so I don't feel like I'm on the side of changing the wording in that book, but also making sure that you don't separate the history from that book, because it is a book set in a particular time, and that time has issues that people need to know about and address. So can you separate the artist from the art? I don't. I personally feel like you can have them both. I do like the idea of the author is dead and the reader creates the meaning of the story when they read it, because that's very true when you read a book as a child and then you come back and read it as an adult. Different things come out, and you envision things differently. But also, you need to take into account who wrote it and when, and what does that mean to the book, and how does that change how the people in the book react compared to people today. And so I think there's got to be a mixture of the both there. But I also think that we need to take into account the artist when they are being compensated for their work. For example, these Harry Potter books that I got for my wife. It's the complete series here. I got it from a used bookstore. They were cheap. There's lots of copies of Harry Potter out there. And so I was able to get a complete set of the hardcovers for cheap. And with it being a used bookstore, Rowling didn't get any of that money. Same thing with the Ender's Game. There's lots of Ender's Game books at used bookstores. There always seems to be copies there. And that's a way that you can get the art and read it and analyze it for yourself, appreciate it for yourself, without any of that money going to the person whose views may be damaging, who sends their money to organizations that actively work against what you're trying to fight to change. And so, like for a good example, J.K. Rowling, when somebody tweeted to her asking her how she could sleep at night, she responded, her exact quote was, "I read my most recent royalty checks and find the pain goes away pretty quick." And so if you enjoy her work, there are ways to enjoy it without the money going into her pocket. It makes it more difficult with things like the new video game that came out. If they come out with new movies, every time that, like this new video game, they pay her for the license to use that. And so that video game is supporting her. Same thing with anything that Orson Scott does. Unless things have changed, he donates money to organizations that people find offensive and actually working against bettering our society for everyone. So one thing that is a personal idea of mine that kind of leans towards the artist is dead is that people seem to think I'm a funny guy.
Who says that?
Whether I am or not, that's up to people to decide. There's probably people who think I'm a horribly dry, bland person, but uh, I don't necessarily see myself as a funny guy, but I am somebody who can recognize the funniness in a situation. It reminds me of a comic strip. I actually tried to look it up before starting this video to see if I could find it and give credit to someone. But Googling, I don't know exactly how you Google to find this particular thing. But it was a guy who was talking about the cornfield at this fall festival, and just how great it was. And the guy's wife is like, "If you make some kind of stupid joke, I'm gonna leave you." And then the next panel is him saying it was amazing, with the maize spelling for corn. And then it shows her going out the door, and he's got a little tear running down his eye. And that's kind of how I feel about humor, is that the joke is there. Somebody just needs to recognize it and then point attention to it. And so it's almost like being a joke prophet. Like that joke chose me at that time to put it out there. And so it's not, people say that I'm funny. It's like, I'm not funny. The situation is funny, and I'm just able to show that to people. And so that's almost kind of like the the author is dead kind of a thing, because these stories, these ideas are out there. And Orson Scott Card, with his personal beliefs, was able to come up with Ender's Game and Speaker of the Dead, which, if you read Speaker of the Dead, is quite a different twist from Ender's Game. The path that Ender takes, it seems like a very progressive and open-minded journey that he's on, and yet it came from Orson Scott Card, who could be defined as anything but open-minded. So, you know, is he? I mean, he's a talented writer. I'll give him that. But like the story, it almost feels like it came from somewhere else, and it just came through him. And it's up to us to define it when we read it. So, is it right to review bomb a board game? The board game isn't any worse than it was before all this came out. I don't know what the rating was. I don't know how good the game is, but it's now 4.1 with 101 ratings, and all the comments are just talking about how they stole the Magic cards. I think people who own the game, if they enjoy it, they can play it, and when they bring it out, they might be reminded of, hey, this is the thing that the designer did.
Allegedly.
And then you can decide whether or not you would agree with what he did, but you can still enjoy the game. I also find it interesting that, I say all this outcry. It's 101 votes out of 200. So, I mean, it's not a huge outcry, but it's enough to get it to the hotness on Board Game Geek, and it's now getting into more people's eyes. So who knows where it's going to go from here. But does what the artist did, does it matter what they did? It seems weird to me that there's this outcry because they stole, I think the number thrown out there was $300,000 in Magic cards or something like that. I don't know, but if it was stolen from a mom and pop little display at Gen Con, that's a huge blow to somebody's living. If it's taken from Papa Hasbro, billion-dollar company, then it's a drop in the pan, and a faceless corporation who, by its nature, does not care about people and works in its best interest. So it's kind of weird that there's all this outcry if it was theft from a gigantic megacorp who scoops up the tiny guy and spits him out, as opposed to a J.K. Rowling or Orson Scott Card, who actively work to make a discriminated minority's life more difficult, or something like that. Like Bill Cosby's comedy, it's difficult to listen to. It was never great back in the day anyways. I remember my parents had some albums, and there was some funny stuff as a kid, mainly his voices and things like that. But like as an adult, his humor I kind of outgrew it, and with his issues, it kind of sours the whole thing, because like I said, you can enjoy the art, but you still can't separate the person from the art as part of the historical context there. But if Bill Cosby stole $300,000 worth of Magic cards, would that would that make me dislike his comedy more than I already do? I doubt it. It seems like a weird thing to be attacking this guy's game over. You can dislike the guy. What he did is wrong. You're not allowed to steal. It's against the law. But it's not he's not punching down, which is in my opinion the worst of the worst. You know, if you're punching up, at least you're going for somebody powerful. If you're punching down, you're just picking on the weak. And that seems to be what people like J.K. Rowling are trying to do with their money. So, anyways, I think I'm rambling now. What are your thoughts? Can you separate the art from the artist? Is it right to separate the art from the artist, or do you need to have this nuanced thing where it's like you can enjoy the art yourself, but also keep in mind who and when it was created? And what do you think of using the secondhand market as a way to consume the art and the content without rewarding the artist? Is that the way to go, or does it reflect poorly on me that we even have these games on? I mean, these books on our bookshelf. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.